Welcome back to another video here at Flex Point Off-Road. Today I got something that I'm sure a lot of you at one time or another have owned, a Toyota pickup truck. So here we have a 1983 Toyota pickup truck, and it has the infamous, probably the most famous motor in the world as far as I'm concerned, the Toyota 22R. So today what I'm doing is I'm getting ready to start the short block assembly, and then we're going to work our way all the way up into putting a cylinder head, timing cover, timing chain on. Never made a video about this, so I think, you know, it's time for another video. I figure, you know, this is today's job, so why don't I get the camera rolling? So let me give you a little update so far what I have. So here I have a prepped block already. We'll go over that in a little bit. I got rockers have already been cleaned and ran through a hot tank. Same with the valve cover, a brand new timing cover that's been decked to the block. Oil pan's been, you know, ran through the hot tank. The cylinder head's already been redone. Crankshaft right here, this thing's been redone, so this has been ground and polished. The line bore on the engine's also been done as well to make sure that nothing's bent in, you know, the block. The connecting rods, all the surfaces have been redone on these. New pin bushings in there. 22R pistons. These are actually 40 over pistons. These are, you know, quite large for Toyota, but you know, hey, a lot of times when you get one of these blocks, it's probably been rebuilt, you know, twice. You know, if you get one that's never been rebuilt, well, lucky you, you found, you know, needle in the haystack. So I don't do my own machine work. I take it to a local shop here in town, and there's a standard recipe that I always have them follow. So it always starts with the block. So the block always gets hot tanked, because there's times where people have ran stop leak, garbage like that. It's a head gasket, you know, stop leak, just a bunch of garbage basically. And what that does, it gets inside these coolant ports in there and it plugs up this stuff. So you got to get it ran through a hot tank to clean all that garbage out. That way on your fresh rebuild, you're not going to have any overheating problems, because what will happen is if you have smaller coolant areas, because stuff's in there and plugging it up, you're not going to get good circulation. You're going to end up with hot spots on random cylinders and even in your head. So always make sure to hot tank it. Another thing that I always do, I get the main bore done. So when the caps are fit onto here, like here's a cap right here, let's just set that here. So these get bolted down, you get a line bore ran through there, and it makes sure that this hole is nice and even all the way across. So that's a real important step, because if you've ever taken your bearings apart and you start seeing bearings with abnormal wear, you know, on different cylinders basically, probably the line bore needs to happen, you know, because something's bent and not straight. So do yourself a favor, get that done. It's maybe another 150 bucks. Next step is, well, for starters, let me undo this, bring this around. I always get the deck done on here. So the deck is really important always to get done. That makes sure you have a flat top to work with. That way when the cylinder head gasket goes on, you know it's perfectly flat. The head gasket's going to have a good chance at surviving. Same with this, I always get a bore job done, even if the cylinder walls look good. A lot of times, if you're doing a first time over, I always go the minimal amount, which is 20 over on an oversized piston. And that way I'm leaving the most meat possible for a rebuild later down the road. You know, hopefully it's, you know, 10, 20 years down the road from the first time, but you want to leave meat in there. The only reason, in my opinion, you want to go bigger on the bore on a 22R is if you have heavy scratches in the sidewall. You've had maybe a piston break and again gouged the sidewall. You've severely overheated the engine, you know, before. Cylinders, you know, they turn oval and you got to get them all round again. So the easiest way is to just open up the holes, bore it, and then of course you're going to get everything honed. You know, you always want to get a good hone job done in there. You can see the cross hatches in there. That's what you want to see. So that's very important, is to, you know, get it properly honed. Don't just use a ball hone and do it in your own garage. It's a dumb idea. A big overlooked process that almost everybody never does is the timing cover. So what you want to have done is when you're getting this surface decked, you want to get your timing cover. You want to get it bolted down at the machine shop. That way when they deck this thing, these two surfaces right here are exactly flat together. And it's kind of hard to pick up, but you can see the machine marks on the top of the timing cover. And plus too, I don't want to have to be cleaning these things up. These things are terrible to clean up, and new and shiny, you know, makes the customer feel better. And a lot of times too, let's get in here, when the timing chain guides break, they will eat into the side of the case right here. And what'll happen is you can eat into this so far. There's a coolant jacket right here, and coolant will actually start to spray out right here into the engine oil. So you don't want to have that happen. So spend, you know, the $100, get yourself a timing cover, deck it as well. We'll go over the cylinder head later, but for right now, I want to start with what I always do. So when you get your new block back, you want to clean it out. It's not clean from the machine shop. Get a blowgun, get into all these little ports, blow every little hole out, get in where the freeze plugs glow, blow that out. Any oiler ports, get that, clean that out as well. The next thing I do is I get some lint-free towels. I put some hot soap water in there, and I get in and scrub all this really good with your hand, and then wipe it out with a clean one, and then blow, you know, hit it with the blowgun again, get any little maybe lint that might have came off, and clean that stuff up. After that, lightly oil, put some oil on your hand and rub it in the bores, you know, get it all done. And that way, as you're building it, this isn't rusting right here. So what we're going to do next, I'm going to go back down to the bottom to show you. All right, all of these holes right here, these are where your main bearings are going to click in. And if there's any dirt in any of these holes down in here, as soon as you fire this engine up, anything that's in that block that's dirty, it's going to pump right into your brand new bearings. So let's do yourself a favor, blowgun all that out. There's also some oil galley ports you can remove, like here's one right here. Blow that out, blow into all these oiler ports. Like here's where the timing tensioner is, here's where some more oiling is, more oil. Just get in there and blow that out with the timing, you know, with the air gun, sorry. That way we're as clean as possible. Now one thing I like to do too, and I know this is everybody's personal choice, try to sweep the floor. My floor is a fab shop in here, so I'm always having junk all over the floor, grinder dust, you name it, it's here. So I like to try to sweep my area daily. Next piece of the puzzle is crankshaft. So crankshaft, it's a big question everybody's going to have. You know, what size bearings do you need? Well, that's going to depend on many factors. The condition of the crankshaft. So if you get your motor out and your crankshaft looks like this, it's in really good shape, you got no grooves in there, it probably just needs a light polish. The bearing size that came out is probably what you're going to end up be using, but we'll get into that later. On the bottom of the bearings, there's also going to be numbers down here. Like this one says 1.0. This is quite an oversized bearing because this engine, it's been rebuilt before. When I took this thing apart, I can definitely tell somebody's been through it before, at least twice, just from the look of it. And it's, you know, 18 years of doing this, I've looked at a lot of Toyota stuff, so I got a pretty good indicator. So when I do my stuff at the machine shop, I take the crankshaft down there, I take the block down there, and then I actually have the machine shop do some measurements after they do the line bore. And then they also, when they first start to polish this, they take some measurements with the micrometer. They take some measurements, you know, of this surface right here where the line bore is. And then what they'll do is they'll actually tell me, hey Ross, go order these bearings up. In this instance right here, I have King bearings, and they tell me the size, I order the brand, I take it down there, and then what they do is the crankshaft is then machined to the specifications after the math's done while inserting some of these bearings into that block down there. So these are things the machine shop's going to do, because you can go and buy the same size bearings in different brands and the oil clearances will always come out differently. Each set of each brand is always machined a little bit different. So it can say, you know, a 20 undersized bearing, but it might have a bigger, you know, looser oil spec than something else. So I like to stick with the same brand of bearings. I like King bearings. There's, you know, a dozen other bearings you can use whatever you want, but have your block machined and the crankshaft to accept the bearings you brought in. So physically bring them in the box, let them measure everything out, and then they'll do it. When I've done this, when I go and put my plastigauge down, my oil clearances are generally always within spec because the math was already done at the machine shop. So enough rambling on that. We need to start with what is the first step. Now that we got everything cleaned, we have parts, what do we do next? Well, first step's going to be, you're going to open up all your bearings out of the box. You're always going to look at the bearings. You're going to make sure that there's no scratches or dirt on the bearings. And now there's two sides of the bearings. So this would be like what I would call the lower, and this would be the upper. So if you're looking at the motor sitting, you know, cylinder head up, you know, you can figure it out upper or lower. So in the bottom down here, there's an oil port. That's where the oil comes in. You see that oil hole right there? We need to line these up. You just push that into place. So that was really easy. So that's going to be what I would call the upper. And then we're going to repeat that process all the way down. All right, next step of the puzzle. So all of these bearings are in right here on the main. Now we need to drop the crankshaft in, and then we're going to put some plastigauge on there. We're going to check the oil clearances. That's the next step on this. Well, my little holder's working great, isn't it? Maybe one day I'll get this thing upgraded a little bit. Until then, this is what we got. And this ain't working good. Good enough. All right, there's the crankshaft. It's now sitting in here. Now again, this is for oil clearance checking. There's no oil, there's no assembly lube, there's nothing like that on here. So what we're going to do next is we need to go see what the oil clearances are supposed to be, which I've already pulled them up for you guys. Let's go first to main bearing clearances for the oil. We're going to go 22R-RE because we got an 83 block. So it states 0.016 to 0.015 millimeters. Now this is going to be your plastigauge, and then you're going to notice it doesn't zoom very good, does it? So anyways, let's flip this around. We gotta have, basically after we crush the plastigauge, we want to have it, you know, somewhere, millimeters, not inches, this side. We want to be somewhere between right here and right here on the spacing. So when that plastigauge crushes, we want it to match the width of this, or this area right in here. So if we can get anywhere in those upper areas right here, that's what we want. So we also have to torque the caps down, and the specifications in the book on the main bearing cap and bolts says 76 foot-pounds. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, all right, we have the plastigauge everywhere. So all the mains, the plastigauge is there. Next step is we need to take what I would call the lower bearing. Remember, this is this guy. And what we're going to do is we're going to click these in, and these can only go one way because there's a tang right there and there's a little tang right there. Okay, and then on these, there's going to be little numbers stamped in there. It says number 1, and you see this little beveled edge? That's a pointer. That means this needs to face the front of the engine. You see what's going on there? So we're going to repeat that process for all the caps, and for right now, the thrust washers, you're probably wondering what about the thrust washers? They're right here in this package. For the oil clearances, we're going to leave them out. Alright, there's all the caps set on here in order with the arrows facing towards the front of the motor. Now what we got to do is we got to slightly snug down all the bolts, and there is an order to this. So I'm going to go like this and show you the procedure right here. 4 cylinders, so you can see, you know, 1 through 10. There's the front of the motor. And then there's an order too. You don't just want to reef them down. So the final torque is 76, so you break it up into 3 steps. So I've always done 22, 52, 76. That's how I tighten these motors down. So I am going to lightly start with an electric impact gun and just start to just barely touch these. Okay, 1, 2, and then 3, 4, 4, and then 5, 6, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So now we're going to go over everything with a torque wrench, and again 3 steps. So you're going to repeat that same process on the order that I've shown you right here, and do it first to 22, then 52, then 76. So this is my torque wrench right here. That's 22. 52. Now again, same order. Now 76. Also, what's important to note is don't rotate the crankshaft or move it back and forth as you're doing this. It'll skew what you're doing. Okay, 76 foot-pounds will be the final. You can see this torque wrench is not a good one anymore. All right, next stage in the process is we gotta undo everything we just did. So reverse on the order of the bolts. So start from the outer, work your way back towards the center. Then we're gonna lift the little main caps off, and then we're gonna inspect to see the clearances. these guys are just gonna lift right up. So a little trick I like to do is I'll actually lift the bolts almost all the way out, and then I can like move the cap, get it off. So there it is, pulled up right there. I don't know if you can see on this, but there's that little green line right there. That's what we're going to be measuring to see the oil clearance. We can either look on here or on the crankshaft itself. So pull all these out and lay them in order. Okay, let me get in there a little bit. So see that line right there? That's what we're going to be measuring right there. So each one of these now has a crushed area, and that's what we're going to be looking at. So again, in each one of these caps, see, that's what I'm talking about right there. We're going to be doing that. So what we're going to be doing, we're going to be taking this gauge right here, and then we're going to basically be, let me just cut a piece off of this. Be a little easier to fit this in and see what we're doing here. Okay. All right. We're going to be on the millimeters, so let's go see what we have here. So if we go get in here, and you look at that, you see how that white line right there, that's about matching up to that little groove. So on that white line, that's about 0.38 millimeters. So when we go back to our chart that we had here, let's go look at the oil clearancing. We're main bearing 22R through 88, 0.16 to 0.5. So 0.38 is right in the middle of those acceptable specs. So I'm going to go in and compare all the rest of them and make sure, and then what we have to do after that is we got to clean off all that junk. So we're going to be lifting the crankshaft back out again. I got to scrape all of this stuff off on all the bearing surfaces, so be very careful with it. You don't want to nick the bearings, you don't want to nick the crankshaft. The bearings will nick easier than the crankshaft. So after we're done with that, we're going to come right back. Holy moly, dude. All right, now that the clearances have been checked, cleaned off all the surfaces of the bearings, crankshaft, now it's time to actually do the installation. So I get some assembly lube out. This is AMSOIL assembly lube. So and then you're gonna smear it on the faces of everything. So this is, you know, real important. So generously put it all over. Okay. there's that. So as you can see now, I have thrust washers out. We're going to go all over that in a moment. Okay. See if I can get a little bit better view of what's happening in the engine itself, because that's what you guys want to see. Now that that is set into place, now what we got to do is we got to insert the thrust washers. See these thrust washers? There's two different types. Two have tangs, two don't. Also see these little grooves right here? These are oiler grooves, and then these are flat. The oil grooves, when you go and put this in here, the oiling grooves are going to face the crankshaft on both sides. So whichever side the bearing's on, that's where the oiler is going to go right there, and then this way vice versa. So now we're going to lubricate this thrust washer. Begin with some assembly lube. Okay, so get a good amount on there. Put it on both sides. And then again, we're going to insert this with that groove facing the crankshaft. So I'm going to drop this in here. Actually, let's do this one. This one's easier. So I really want to show you this piece right here. So see how I have it dropped in there, and the oil grooves are on this side facing this way. Then you're going to roll it. It's going to go down. Now watch. We'll look down there as I start to poke this down. It lines up halfway. Now what we got to do is carefully grab the crankshaft, and we're going to thrust it towards me just a little bit. Now see this side, it's now opened up, and then it's going to be ready to accept this one. So we're going to go ahead and do the same exact thing. Again, oiler hole is going to face the cast on the crankshaft. Put it in, and then you're going to spin it around and rotate it till it's nice and smooth. There's nothing crazy about it. Next, we're going to take the cap with the bearing in there, and we're going to put assembly lube also on this face of this as well. And put them back in order. And then what I did too is I got a light drop of oil on each thread as well on the bolts. Okay, so I start them with the fingers just to get the bolt started. Now all the way back up to the front. We'll do the thrust washer one in a minute. Let's just continue. Okay, so now when we go to do these thrust washers and this cap, you're going to notice in the cap there's this indentation. What we're going to do is we're going to set this bearing right in just like that, and this little tab locks this in from rotating. And again, we're going to have the grooves facing out on both sides. So what I generally do is I'll put a little bit of assembly lube to help stick it to that little bearing cap right there. So let's show you the install on this one now. And get my awesome tripod to cooperate here. Good enough. So we're gonna put a bearing. Almost out. Let's get some of this Torco assembly lube. I got a little bit of that left, so we're gonna go with that. Okay, so again, I'm gonna take this guy, we're gonna set it right in there. Oiler holes facing outwards. Make sure the arrow's facing towards the front of the motor. And I'm kind of holding the bearings on the side. Go. So as you can see right down in there, these are the tabs that are holding the thrust washers front to back, and the other half circle ones are rotated towards the top of the block. So that's probably the hardest part people don't understand. And then what we're going to do is, after we cinch these down just on the first 22 pass, we're going to take a little mallet and lightly hit this way, and then we're going to go on this counterweight and we're going to hit the crankshaft back that way. We're going to do that a few times to seat everything. So we're going to repeat the same procedure as last time, the 3-step torque, 22, 52, 76, and follow the same torque specification order that we did earlier. All right, so that's the 22-pound pass. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the rubber mallet, we're gonna hit it on this side. So let's just get over here and do this. So we're gonna get over here. Okay, what that's doing right there is that's actually helping seat the thrust washers, making sure that they're where they're supposed to be. So we're going to go ahead and do the final 2 torque steps. So now we got to go to 52 pounds. That's what we're going to do next. 52. Okay, now 76 foot-pounds. I think I hit that one already. Nope. And then I always do one final pass as well. Just because sometimes bolts will stretch. Okay, so there's your crankshaft installed. And then what we're going to do is we're going to wipe all of these. Get this cleaned up. Then what we're going to do is we're going to get the old paint pen out. And there's just slippery from the assembly lube. I'm going to do a nice little mark. That way I know I've done all these. And then I don't gotta, remember, hey, did I torque those down or not? So again, during that whole process, you want to make sure you're not rotating the crankshaft until we are finally done. Now it is the moment of truth. This thing spins really good. So yeah, so I'm going to end that one right here. This is going to be a part one. I'll be filming more as I put this thing together. The next step will be rod bearings. And again, we're going to check the oil clearances on the rod bearings, torque the rod bearings down. We're going to hang the pistons, which means putting the wrist pins into the pistons. We're going to go over ring gap and then piston installation. So that's going to be part two, so stay tuned.